Amsterdam is a city known for its canals, bicycles, and cultural tolerance. But it's also the city where one of history's most important diaries was written, by a girl in hiding, during one of Europe's darkest chapters. Anne Frank's story is known worldwide, but her connection to Amsterdam is more than just geographical. The city shaped her childhood, sheltered her during the Holocaust, and ultimately became the backdrop to her legacy. Before the war, Amsterdam was a place of refuge. It welcomed the Frank family when they fled Nazi Germany in 1933. But like much of Europe, the city would fall to occupation, forcing Anne and her family into hiding. Her writing captured not only her personal thoughts, but the story of a city under siege. This is the story of Anne Frank and Amsterdam, how a city shaped her experience, and how her memory continues to shape the city today. In the early 1930s, Amsterdam was a thriving port city, known for its liberal politics and cultural diversity. It had long been a haven for religious minorities, including Jews fleeing persecution elsewhere in Europe. When Adolf Hitler came to power in Germany in 1933, thousands of German Jews sought refuge in the Netherlands, including Otto Frank, Anne's father. The Franks settled in Amsterdam's Rivierenbuurt, a neighbourhood with a growing German Jewish community. Life there was peaceful, at least at first. Anne attended a Montessori school, and the family gradually adapted to Dutch life. Otto Frank established a business in the city, and Amsterdam seemed far removed from the growing extremism across the border. But the sense of safety was temporary. By 1940, the Nazis had invaded the Netherlands, and Amsterdam's Jewish residents began to face restrictions. Businesses were seized, freedoms curtailed, and Jewish children, including Anne, were forced to leave their schools. Before the war, Amsterdam had offered the Franks a fresh start, but under occupation, the city became a place of surveillance, fear, and betrayal. For many, the transformation was slow and disorienting. For Anne, it would mark the beginning of a new and far more dangerous chapter. Anne Frank arrived in Amsterdam at the age of 4. To her, the city was not a place of exile, but a home. She spoke Dutch fluently, made friends easily, and embraced the rhythms of daily life. Her early childhood in Amsterdam was marked by freedom and curiosity, bike rides along the canals, school friendships, and a growing interest in reading and writing. The Franks lived in a modest apartment in the southern part of the city, surrounded by other immigrant families. Anne attended the 6th Montessori school, where she was known for being lively and outspoken. Her father, Otto, ran Opekta, a company that sold pectin for making jam. While the family lived modestly, their life was stable. Anne's experience of Amsterdam in the late 1930s was deeply shaped by her environment. She grew up in a tolerant society that valued education and individuality, until that reality began to unravel. When anti-Jewish laws were introduced in 1941, Anne had to transfer to a segregated Jewish school. Friends disappeared. Public spaces became restricted. Fear crept into daily life. The Amsterdam Anne first knew was disappearing, replaced by something harsher and narrower. But the openness she had known in childhood would remain present in her writing. As we delve deeper into Anne Frank's Amsterdam, you bring these stories to life. Keep liking and sharing to help me continue this journey. Don't forget to subscribe and share your insights in the comments as we continue to explore the world together. The German occupation of the Netherlands began in May 1940 and swiftly transformed life in Amsterdam. At first, the impact was gradual, but by 1941, the Nazis began enforcing harsh anti-Jewish laws, curfews, mandatory yellow stars, exclusion from public spaces, and the forced closure of Jewish-owned businesses. Anne's father, Otto Frank, was forced to give up control of Opekta, which was then managed by trusted non-Jewish colleagues. Anne and her sister, Margot, were removed from their schools and sent to the Jewish Lyceum. Bicycles were confiscated, radios were banned, parks, cinemas, and even sidewalks were closed to Jews. Day by day, the space in which Amsterdam's Jewish residents could exist was reduced. The city that once offered refuge now operated under a regime of surveillance and compliance. Mass deportations from Amsterdam began in 1942. Jews were rounded up and sent to Westerbork transit camp, then on to concentration and extermination camps in the east. Entire neighbourhoods emptied. Friends vanished. Fear was constant. It was against this backdrop that the Frank family went into hiding. On July 6, 1942, they moved into a concealed annex behind Otto's former office on Prinsengracht. It was a decision made out of desperation. For Anne, it meant saying goodbye to the city she knew and entering a space where time would slow, noise could be fatal, and freedom was reduced to memory. Amsterdam had once saved the Franks. Under occupation, it could no longer protect them. The entrance to the Secret Annex was hidden behind a swinging bookcase inside Otto Frank's office building at Prinsengracht 263. It was here that Anne, her parents, sister, and 4 other people, another family, and a dentist, would live in complete concealment for over 2 years. The space was cramped, dark, and silent. During office hours, they couldn't flush a toilet or walk too loudly. Every noise risked discovery. In these conditions, Anne began to write. Her diary, originally a gift for her 13th birthday, became a lifeline. She documented daily routines, tensions among the 8 residents, her fears, and her hopes. But her writing also reflected a wider world, news from outside, whispered reports of deportations, and reflections on human nature. The people who helped them, WWII, Johannes Kleiman, and others, risked their lives to bring food, news, and a connection to the outside. Without them, survival would have been impossible. The annex was both a prison and a fragile sanctuary. For Anne, it was also a time of growth. She read constantly, reflected deeply, and imagined a future beyond the annex walls. Her voice matured, even as the world outside narrowed. The annex couldn't protect them forever. On August 4th, 1944, the Gestapo raided the building. All 8 residents were arrested. Anne's diary was left behind, rescued later by WWII. The annex was small, but in it, Anne created a document that would go on to shape how millions understand the Holocaust, and how one city's silence turned into remembrance. After their arrest in August 1944, Anne Frank and the others from the annex were first taken to Westerbork transit camp, then deported to Auschwitz in early September. From there, Anne and her sister Margot were transferred to Bergen Belsen, a concentration camp in northern Germany. Conditions were dire, overcrowded, cold, and disease-ridden. Food was scarce, hygiene was non-existent. The sisters died in early 1945, likely from typhus, just weeks before the camp was liberated. Only Otto Frank survived. After the war, he returned to Amsterdam, where WWII gave him Anne's recovered diary. It was the first time he read her words in full. Deeply moved, he arranged for its publication in 1947. The Diary of a Young Girl would go on to become one of the most translated and read books in the world. Amsterdam, meanwhile, had been deeply scarred. Of the city's approximately 80,000 Jewish residents before the war, around 60,000 were murdered in the Holocaust. Neighbourhoods were emptied, cultural life was shattered. Yet Anne's diary gave the city a way to remember, through one voice, one perspective. Her story offered a human face to a massive tragedy. And as the post-war years unfolded, Amsterdam began a slow reckoning with both its suffering and its silence. In the decades following World War II, Amsterdam began to acknowledge the scale of what had been lost. Memorials were erected, plaques placed, and remembrance ceremonies held. But no site would come to define this memory more than the Anne Frank House. Opened to the public in 1960, the building at Prinsengracht 263 became both a museum and a place of reflection. Visitors could walk the same narrow stairs, see the same small rooms, and read excerpts from the diary that had made Anne's voice famous. Over time, it became one of the most visited museums in the Netherlands, drawing people from around the world. Anne Frank's name is now everywhere in Amsterdam. Schools, streets, and community centres bear her name. Yet, beyond these honours, the city has committed to educating future generations. Initiatives in schools, exhibitions, and public programming ensure that Anne's story, and the broader lessons of intolerance and indifference, are never forgotten. Amsterdam's memory is not static. It evolves, challenges, and confronts. And at the centre of this process is a teenage girl's diary, written in hiding, in a house that still stands. Anne Frank's story has become one of the most powerful accounts of the Holocaust, but it is also inseparable from the city of Amsterdam. This was the place that welcomed her as a child, restricted her as a teenager, and preserved her memory after her death. The city shaped her experiences, and in turn, her diary helped shape the world's understanding of what happened there. Amsterdam is not just the backdrop to her story, it is a character in it, a place of refuge and betrayal, silence and remembrance. Today, the city is a global symbol of reflection, due in no small part to the words of one girl who never left its walls. Through her writing, Anne Frank gave voice to millions, and through that voice, Amsterdam continues to remember, not just what was lost, but what must never be forgotten. For more captivating adventures and explorations of incredible places around the world, click on the video on screen now. Your next journey awaits. Happy travels.